Hello, everyone. My name is Thane Rosenbaum. I'm the creative director of the Forum on Life, Culture, and Society at Touro College. And welcome to the Folks film series. Today, a new film that the Folks audience received an advanced screening of. Here we'll be having a conversation with the new film, The Secrets We Keep. It will be released this week on September 16th nationally. It stars Noomi Rapace, who many of you know, of course, from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Yuval Adler, who you may know, and if you haven't seen Bethlehem, you should. It's an amazing film with a devastating ending. And we have both Noomi and Yuval with us. Before we start today's conversation, if you're watching us live on Facebook, please leave us your email address somewhere so you can get advance notice of future events. You can do so on the comments section on Facebook, or you can go to folks.org and leave it there. And if you want to leave a question for Noomi or Yuval, you have on the bottom of your screen or on the right side of your screen the Q&A button. You can leave it there and we'll hopefully get to that. So welcome, both of you. Noomi, Yuval, thank you very much. Let me congratulate you on a really original, amazing film on so many levels. There's so much to talk about. Let me just start off by saying it's an original twist on a Holocaust story. You have a story that it takes place after the Holocaust, immediately after. Victims are trying to get home, which was difficult to do. Nazis are on the run because they should be. And in this instance, the Nazis and victims sort of unfortunately meet up. The victims in this case are not Jews. They're the Roma, the gypsies of Romania. And many people, this is one of those, less discussed tale of the Holocaust, but somewhere between 270,000 to, I think the estimates could be as much as 600,000 Roma were killed in the Holocaust. They too, like the Jews and homosexuals and disabled, were selected for extermination. And so therefore the Germans who they run into, the Nazis here, think of them theoretically as subhuman in the same way that Hitler convinced Jews, homosexuals, and disabled were subhuman. And the crime here is not a gassing or it's not a killings field. It's something more ordinary. It's not it doesn't look like a Holocaust crime. It's a gang rape by drunken soldiers that are trying to get home and are scared that they're going to be captured. And they know they're dealing with the Roma, and they figure that they're subhuman. It doesn't matter at this point. So in a drunken night of rampage, we have rapes and mass murder. Let me just ask this, starting out. I understand, Yuval, that originally the story didn't involve Roma, and perhaps the victims were Jews. You also didn't direct it, you co-wrote the screenplay. You made a decision here to change the story. Can we talk a little about that to start?
I mean, I came to the project rather late, like a few months before production. And Noomi basically decided that I should direct this film. And when Noomi makes such a decision, I just finished another film and I was very tired, I was exhausted and whatever. So I wasn't eager to—
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? The audience doesn't know that Noomi also serves as the executive producer as this film. So it would make sense that she would make this call. Okay, go ahead.
So when Noomi came to me, and that was like 3-4 months before we actually started shooting, then we both liked something about the existing script, but there was a lot that we thought that we're going to change. The existing script, as you said, was about the Holocaust, not just about the Jews, but more about like there was concentration camp scenes in Germany and all this kind of stuff that we didn't want to deal with. We wanted to deal with the life after the event and how these events, you know, are kind of playing in the present, which is kind of 15 years after it, in the present of the story. So there was a fundamental kind of reorientation of the script, and the way it happened is that Noomi was in New York. We started meeting and, you know, sitting for hours and saying, okay, what about this? What about this? And for me, I was always asking her, what this means to you, or what from your experience, from your biography, we can use here. So for example, all this stuff with the sister, you know, that their backstory involved heavily a lost sister, is something that was very personal to Noomi from her relationship with her sister. Also the Roma, I remember asking her about stuff, and she brought up that she has some people in her family that it's very important to her, whatever. And then we said, why don't we look into this? Why don't we study this? So we studied this, and we read about this, and we talked to experts and to Roma people who have also knowledge of this period, and it was just a whole world. So we decided to, you know, to center it on that.
So Noomi, yes, I did read that you have some ancestry that's Roma.
So my dad was a Spanish flamenco singer, half Spanish Roma and half Spanish. So I didn't know him. I only met him like 7 times, but I had a very strong relationship to flamenco and to the traveling people in Europe. And they've been chased and blamed and harassed and hated. And, you know, they have the worst reputation in Europe. So since I was a child, I always had this, you know, bleeding heart for the Roma. And you know, when I started discovering how badly treated they are, actually when I did Sherlock Holmes, and it was Hans Zimmer that came to me because I played a Roma now, and Hans also had this deep interest and passion for the rights of the Roma. So me and Hans started talking, and then I always had this dream to somehow shine light on their situation. So when Yuval came on board and we started like talking, like how can we move this closer to our hearts? Like, how can it become more personal? And also what stories haven't we seen and what hasn't been told? So in from that perspective, that's when we kind of started deep diving into the problem and the soul of the Roma.
So there's so many things about the film that are truly distinctive and wonderfully unique. For instance, you have a Nazi, ex-Nazi, hiding in plain sight in a small, quaint, bucolic American town in the 1950s, right? We're not in a big city, right? I mean, you think about the same set piece in other films, you know, like, you know, Marathon Man, you know, large films where you see Nazis in, you know, hiding in a major metropolitan area. Here you're in a small town, hiding in plain sight. I think one question I think some of the audience might be wondering, why doesn't Maja just simply go to the sheriff's office? Why doesn't she go to the local police? I mean, I think that one historical thing that's interesting that most people don't realize, which is that by the 1950s, you know, Nazi hunting was not a priority. This was not something that anybody was really doing other than Simon Wiesenthal in Vienna. So it would have been interesting, you know, Maja might not have perhaps believed that she could convince anybody of anything. So tell me what your thinking is on this.
I mean, you're totally right, because there's also a scene that we wrote in the film where Maja tells her story to her husband, Louis. And you know, in her childhood and growing up in Romania, they were chased by the police. They don't trust the government. They have this deep distrust to anyone serving the government. So I mean, it's just in her bloodstream that she wouldn't go to any authority. You kind of avoid authorities. And also, she needs answers. She doesn't want him to go to jail. She needs something from him. And she's desperate to understand and you know, what you described in the beginning, that night, that horrible night that broke something deeply in her that she hasn't been able to mend and heal by herself. And when she sees him, she's convinced that he will help her piece the pieces together. First, she kind of thinks that she wants to kill him, and then she can't do it, and then she's desperate for him to help her, actually.
So does that explain, maybe Yuval, you can jump in here. Does that explain, because the scene, there's an early scene in which she could end this very quickly. She makes the kidnapping, she's put him in an open grave. This movie could have been over in 11 minutes, but she can't pull the trigger. She can't do it. And is the reason she can't do it because it occurs to her that she needs something more from him to fill in the picture of that night? Or is it that she's not a natural avenger and she's realizing that too? But she just doesn't know what to do other than the fact that she simply can't let him walk free. How are we to understand that?
I mean, I think the way we thought about it was basically that here's what was interesting to us from a character point of view. She tries to deal with it by herself. You know, that wasn't, for example, in the original script. You know, she could have seen this man, gone to her husband and say, look, I saw this man, have this talk she had with him on the, you know, when she tells him, look, here's the guy, he lives over there, now come help me. She didn't. She tried to kill the guy himself, which is kind of, for a woman in the 50s, you know, and this guy is a big guy. I'm just talking about the ability to kidnap him, to grab him, whatever. That shows how much she does not, number one, she does not want this to get into her current world. She created this world. If she goes to her husband, if she goes to a sheriff, this whole past is being dragged into a world that she doesn't want. So she tried to deal with it alone.
Because this is the secrets we keep.
Yes. So she tried to deal with them. She fails because, you know, killing a person is not, you know, at the moment of truth, she couldn't go through with it. But that was her intention. Her intention was deal with it alone without anybody needing to know. But of course, that's not how it works, you know. And if something opens up, you have to deal with it. Because also, imagine it's a psychological treatment. Something opened up. You can't say, oh, okay, I'm putting it back in the box and I forget about it. You know, it's up. Now you have to deal with it. So once she took him home also, they couldn't go to the police, as she says, because she already kidnapped him. She almost killed him. She, you know, they wouldn't believe her. Like, she kind of locked her in her, like her husband and her are now locked into the situation already, you know?
I also think it's important to remember, again, early 1950s, mid 1950s, throughout pretty much the entire decade, the Holocaust is not very well known at all.
Yeah, there wasn't this show on Amazon, Hunters, yet.
No, there right. There was definitely not that.
It was
but
not
even the Diary of
They didn't
Anne
have
Frank,
it yet.
Yeah, even the Diary of Anne Frank was not yet well known, right? People don't remember that it took several decades after the liberation of the camp. So by the 1950s, this is not a widely known story.
Yeah.
This is something that she's carrying this burden, so much so that it's interesting that the secrets that we keep, the spouses don't seem to know anything. Not only don't they know anything about their spouse, but they don't really know anything about the underlying facts of this movie, right?
And definitely the Roma, by the way.
Right. That's right. You'd say even particularly true of the Roma. Right.
It's also the fact that you've been trying to hide, you know, because you feel shame, because there's this, you don't want your past darkness or destructive, like all the sadness, all the broken dreams, all the loss, you don't want that to bleed into the present day. So you've been trying to deal with things alone for years and years and years. And then, you know, this event happens, you run into this man and everything shatters. And what she didn't expect is that she is terrified of him. Right. So it almost becomes this monster in the basement that it grows because she has like everything comes back and all these flashes, and he becomes almost like an unhuman monster.
Yeah.
So the fear is also something that she doesn't know how to deal with.
And the secrets that we keep, as in the title, what's interesting is that both spouses, the spouse of the victim, the spouse of the persecutor, they have similar experiences, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. They're parallel characters.
That's a nice, the fact that like you have, you know, Chris Messina, Lewis as Noomi's husband, and Amy Simons is Joel's husband, Joel's wife. That they kind of have the same, you know, they're the Americans that are suddenly confronted with this European past, you know,
And a dark
and each
past.
one, you know, reacts to it differently. Like with Chris's character, it's very much. You know, the guy is a very good guy, an innocent. He has an explosive temperament at the same time. You know, he's interesting. Whereas Amy Simon's character, is a woman that will do anything not to show to the outside world that there's problems. So she's kind of holding everything in, which is kind of a little bit like, in a very different way, what Maja does. I mean, about, you know, Maja has it on a much bigger event, but with the Amy character, she was very much about, you know, saving like the facade, and I think that, you know, this, you know, you have these Americans and their attitudes compared to the Europeans that come with their past and their outlook and the fact that they're different. It's interesting that this film was made. I mean, Joel and Noomi are European.
Right.
I'm Israeli. I don't know what that counts even. Like half European, half Middle Eastern. I don't know what that is. Kolya Brand, the DP, was German. A lot of people at the top of the film were not American.
Yeah.
There were Americans, a lot.
Right.
You know, Nate Jones, the production designer, Christina Flannery, the wardrobe, Greg Shapiro, the producer, who was very much involved in everything. So there was like a mix of Americans and non-Americans. And I think that was interesting. You know?
But there is a sense that the spouses, there's sort of an unknowability of the sort of a forbiddenness, a darkness that both spouses, husband and wife, of Thomas and of Maja, seem to have a sense, premonition, a feeling that there's something there that is forbidden territory.
Yeah.
that is a darkness that I cannot touch, that results in, you know, on both sides, you know, nightmares. You know, at one point, Lewis says, are we going back to, I think he said something like, are we going back to where we were before? As if the psychological problems that Maja was having before, I thought we were done. I got you a psychiatrist. Aren't you finished with that? Are we back there again?
Yeah.
But he doesn't really know anything, and neither does Thomas's wife. I think that does speak to something about what happened in Europe is so unimaginable, so insurpassable as an event, that it's never possible to communicate what it was. And so the spouses simply just live with this silence.
For sure. And it's also, I mean, that was something I felt when we were shooting. You know, I was going between a more sober, you know, producer hat on, you know, and then diving into the basement. So it became this extreme tension in my body. And I felt like almost like me and Joel just went deeper and deeper, and I felt more and more connected to Joel, and I was losing connection with the bright outside world and Lewis, and I could totally feel that Maja's and Thomas' journey, that they needed each other, that they know they're from the same, you know, they have the same trauma, they share the trauma, even though, you know, we're total different sides in that dysfunctional event, you know.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I would say near the end of the film, it becomes very clear that that's what's happening. A strange bonding is happening between Thomas and Maja. And I would say for some people, a disturbing bonding, right? Because we don't want to believe that's possible. You know, if he's truly a monster, if he did everything that he now is confessing he did, how can there be any sympathy for him at all? It makes this movie very emotionally complex. You would normally not see anything like this. Yuval, I mean, obviously this was some, you know, part of the creative process. At the end, I want there to be this connection between them, that a bonding that explains why, you know, she's literally says to him, I won't tell your wife and children. And she's prepared to make a deal with him, which we'll talk about hopefully in a little while, which seems like an odd deal, that this could actually be possible, that we could live in a small town together, given what you did to me and given what you did to my sister and to others, what you were part of. And I'm prepared to keep that secret in a small town, even though I'm likely to bump into you in the grocery store every few days. It's a very odd connection that I think is disturbing, and many people will find it extremely complex psychologically.
For sure.
Yuval?
You're muted. You're mute.
It's because my kids just came and I'm expecting them to start screaming. I'm in an interview. Go. I'm not kidding. It's connected to the fact that I lost my train. What was the thing?
I was talking about the bonding, a disturbing.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Noomi, you do it.
Okay. So what was interesting towards the end, I did a lot of research on the Stockholm Syndrome for another movie. And it was almost like Maja had a little bit of that as well, you know, that she was caught in this deep, disturbing spider web with him, where he had the answer. She was convinced that he will be the one that could help her release her from the guilt, because she felt guilty for surviving. She wasn't sure if she was the one, if she ran away, if she left her sister behind. You know, she had all these unresolved, it was almost like a broken mirror inside of her, and all these reflections, like, you know, but I saw myself do that. And she was so desperate for him to help her glue the mirror back together so she could see the whole picture. And if he could just do that, she kind of started getting more and more convinced that she would be able to heal and mend, and nobody needs to die.
Yeah.
Yuval?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we don't want to give the ending because it's not what people expect. This is everything she was expecting. Yeah. We don't know, you know what I mean? We don't know still anything about them, and what people will find out is not exactly what they think. But I'm just saying the idea that, like, you know, we had a scene, you remember, Noomi, that we cut it, but it was a scene where he told her, where Joel character told your character, you know, Louis will not be able to take it, you know, if you continue, if you go on like this.
Yeah.
He's American. He doesn't know this kind of stuff that we know.
You're like, saying it like in the downstairs in the basement.
In the basement, towards the end, when she was pushing, Joel character basically told her, you are putting yourself, you're pushing this to a point that he wouldn't be able to take it, Louis. You know,
it's interesting because people who study survivors would say that he was partly correct, which was one of the reasons for the silence, certainly in the first 15 years, is because they were trying to start a new life, oftentimes with people that could never possibly understand this. Yeah. And it would creep them out. Yeah. It would be too freaky to hear this story. And will they still love a person who went through this? Can you still love someone who would be this damaged by something like that?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, a lot of women, you know, she suffered something so horrendous, you know, and a lot of victims from these kind of situations of rape and assault, you know, they start blaming themselves and they feel guilty, and it's like, it's so complex, and they feel so much shame. And it's also, you know, so it's easier to deal with it alone. You don't want the other person to know. So it's so much in it, you know. And then when the rage and the hate and the aggressions and Maja's violence start coming out, you know, it's almost like she you know, she did not expect it herself. You know, it's kind of, you know, setting a beast free. And she, you know, and Louis sees her in the moment, and her son sees her in moments where she's totally wide open and cracked open, and she's out of control. She's spinning.
Well, you know, Yuval, we started one of our series, we have a different series called the Conversations on Essential Cinema, where we talk about classic films. And then we have special guests with that. And we just did one with Sharon Stone with Casablanca a week ago. But before that, we did The Pawnbroker. I don't know if either one of you saw the Sidney Lumet 1960s film, The Pawnbroker, starring Rod Steiger. Because that actually is either the first or among the first that does what you do so well here, which is, how does the mind remember? How does it bury things? And how does it start to crack open what's being buried to see it a little more clearly? And again, you can't do this in a play, right? You really, even a novel doesn't do this as well. A movie can do this, and you see the scene of the rampage many different times throughout the film. It's such an interesting piece of art. You see it from different angles, you know, from different positions. You hear some things the same, some things are new. And I was hoping that either of you would speak to that, because it was very artfully done, I think. Because again, if you cut all of them up and showed it to us, we would find them fascinating if we saw them all in a row. But the fact that we see them every 15 minutes is a way of introducing the idea of what is in Maja's head. But it's clear that at the end of this, it's never clear enough for her, right? That she still needs Thomas, right? That in the end, there's a limit to how far her mind will take her.
I mean, Yuval, that was something we spoke so much about, memories and what is a memory and what is the truth in a memory? What is the objective truth? Is there, you know, and how do you remember things? We had many conversations about that, and whose perspective are we seeing it from, and what happens when you put under pressure and someone is keep asking what happened, you're lying, you know, you're not telling the truth. Why did you say that 2 years ago? And then you start doubting yourself because the piece, it doesn't match.
Now, so did you shoot, I'm just curious, when you were shooting the scenes in the town, had all the scenes of the rampage already happen? Were you, obviously as the executive producer, you knew when you were acting that Yuval was going to put in scenes interspersed throughout the movie. You didn't know where it was going to be, but you knew he would artfully figure out places to put them, right? I mean, so how does that work structurally?
We shot them like 2/3 into the film, I think. And Noomi knew that we shot them not because she was an executive producer, but because she had to lie in the mud for like, you know, in the middle of the night in New Orleans. But the thing is that we did a lot of reading and talking about PTSD. We learned about it. We read about it. We tried to figure out a way to actually viscerally let the audience experience a mind that's kind of stuck on a loop, that something starts to repeat and repeat and repeat, which is what kind of when we saw interviews with people who have PTSD, and when you read about it, that's basically one of the fundamental things they always say. It's like that there's this repetition. And we try to kind of create this thing where we constantly show you a version that's both repeating and then is a little different, okay? And that was the big challenge. And as you saw, they're very, very, very fast, and they're very, very aggressive. And I don't think they should read as reliable too much. Like,
right,
you know what I mean? It's
right.
unclear how reliable they are.
Yeah, they're very opaque, right?
Yeah.
You can't really see through them. You hear, you know, that you can hear alcohol being poured. You know, you can actually, if you really try to slow it in your mind,
Sure.
you can try to see, but you can see why Noomi lying there as Maja, you know, being raped, the trauma of it, there's a limit to what she could take in.
Yeah.
Right? There's a limit as a human being. How much of this can I take in and retain?
Yeah.
This is so horrifying. Remember, this is not a girl coming home from high school.
Yeah.
You know, this is a girl coming home from wherever she was liberated, trying to get home.
Yeah.
And by the way, Noomi already made the point that the Roma have a history of being nomads on the move.
Yeah.
So she and her sister are back in the same position as their people. They're on the move. They're not wanted. They're trying to get home. They don't know where home will look like, where their home will accept them. You know, for her to be in this position, you know, she was already in a displaced place mentally. Also, I thought I'm sorry, go ahead, Noomi.
No, was it, you know, kind of a bit not shocking, but what surprised me was that, do you remember this, Yuval, how hard it was for Joel to go into that mindset? God. You know, for me, obviously, it creates almost a trauma in my body too. But you know, I remember when I did the rape and the girl with the dragon tattoo, it was quite, you know, disturbing. A couple of nights of shooting, and that stayed in my system for a long time. And so I kind of knew, I've done films and scenes before when you have to go to this place where it's like you have no control. Someone or a bunch of people or one person is doing something that your body won't know that it's not real, even if your mind keeps saying this is not real, you know. And for Joel, when we shot it, he was really struggling. So sometimes, you know, what it brings up in us when we go in as actors, you know, giving life and truth to those situations, that itself, it brings up so much that we can't even control, that we can't plan, that we don't know, and then we need to find a way to deal with it. Would you agree, Yuval?
Yeah, and I think Joel felt helpless for many reasons. Because, you know, for an actor to be tied up for 80% of the role,
I mean, when he was raping,
this is debilitating.
I was more when we did the rape scene, when he was. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was really it was really hard for him.
Yeah.
I have to say, Noomi, I was hesitating to mention the girl with the dragon tattoo because you've now had two really harrowing experiences as an actress portraying a violent rape.
Yes.
In two very important movies. Very distinctive.
And they have, you know, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. There's something similar with Lisbeth and Maja, because they carry their pain.
Yes.
And the hate and the need for revenge. They've been holding on to that, and it's been feeding something in them, but they're also it's like this vulnerability clashed with that violence. And
a kind of hardness that suggests that they're holding something back, right? Yeah. Sort of you did in both films that experience that Maja is actually lovely, right? But you can also see, you know, she's also a very lovely neighbor, but you can also see that there's a hardness in her, a toughness that even Lewis knows he can't penetrate. You know, and he's a doctor. He doesn't know how. She's been into a psychiatrist. Another thing that was rarely discussed in the 1950s, the fact that Maja was seeing a psychiatrist would have been very rare for a Holocaust survivor, extremely rare. And so I thought that was an interesting twist, Yuval, that Lewis actually goes back to consult again to see, without telling him too much, we're back with the same problems.
Yeah.
When you said something about PTSD, I couldn't help but remember the whistling. Because it's very often the case, psychologists say, that it's sound that triggers memory. That it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be visual. It can be a sound. And in this film, what's extraordinary is that Maja is literally, her head turns around for a whistle.
You know that when this film, when Noomi grabbed me and made me do it, it was like a few months after the Ford Kavanaugh hearings.
Oh, wow.
You know, and the Ford Kavanaugh hearings have this structure, you know, she says, you did this and this and this, and he says, it wasn't me, I wasn't there, right? So, and it was so fascinating to look at, because you look at and you're saying, I can never go back in time and know what happened there, but I just can't see how I have to see how it's going to play out. Who is right? What's going on? You know, these people are, you know, and one of the things, exactly what you're saying, you know, one of the things that she said that Dr. Ford, that was right. Ford, she said, she described him coming to the room and walking down the stairs, him and another guy, and bobbing against the walls. And she said it a few times that she always came back to this image, to this sound, like they were going to understand, they went kind of like this on the wall, the boom, boom, boom. And I thought, you know, it's like, that's what she remembers. That's the key to the whole memory, that sound, right? And then, as you said, PTSD always talk about that, like that they have some sound, and that, you know, in acting also, when they do sense memory and all this stuff, this, you know, it's like about, you know, some kind of sensual thing that unlocks the whole thing. Right. So that idea to take a, you know, a thing, like a sensual thing, like a sound, a voice, whatever, and with her, we play with the whistle and with his voice. Like she hears his voice also, you know? Yeah, that's it. So I think, that was part of something that we learned from our research into this phenomenon, and we kind of made it central in the film.
The fact that you brought up the Kavanaugh hearings, again, only reinforces the idea that yet you have a Holocaust film, but the underlying crime is somewhat ordinary. Again, not gassing, not cremation.
Yes, that's important. Right? It's a war crime. It's not a Holocaust crime. It's a regular war crime. It can be anywhere.
Yeah, this is a crime that is oddly ordinary, as opposed to the extraordinary, which is why even the people watching the film, they can understand it in a way that they could never understand a death camp.
Exactly.
Right? That this is something that everyone can understand, even though the circumstances are extreme. The crime itself is something that is accessible, especially to women. They can imagine. Also, what's interesting is the opening scenes of the movie. You know, you're in a small town. You see a little boy blowing bubbles with his mom. Soon after she follows him but doesn't realize it's him. The very first thing that happens is she runs into a neighbor, a friend, who asks about a PTA meeting. And I love that line about the PTA meeting. I'll tell you why. Because it asks the question, is it possible to even return to normal lives? Given the extraordinary things that people saw during the Holocaust, can you return to really the kinds of regular things, blowing bubbles, being ready to go to a PTA meeting? Most of the survivors, you know, had a very difficult time re-entering the world. They did. They had children. They had PTA meetings. They took children to get ice cream. Yeah, they did all that. But not without an enormous amount of psychological pain that they had to somehow conceal or respond to. They didn't have psychiatrists. And I wonder whether that was part of the thinking here in locating this in a small town, giving them basic things to do, being a good neighbor, you know, that has that other really interesting twist that when the policeman comes to their house, right, he's literally coming to rescue a Nazi. He doesn't know this. It's again, another twist on the Holocaust genre, that the policeman is there to actually, and it's the victims that are really, in this instance, the suspects. I mean, did you have to, was there a lot of thought into, look, we have to try to create the illusion, you know, it even ends on something very normal, you know, 4th of July picnic, you know, we have to give the illusion is it possible for someone like Maja to come to the United States with an American doctor husband and function as if this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Because it does raise the question whether, since the title says The Secrets We Keep, maybe our species is not very good at doing this. That eventually we must reveal the secret to ourselves. We must confront it. I mean, I'm wondering whether that is a message here that, you know, despite the title, everything that she tried to do fails.
Well, I don't know. Again, it's hard to discuss all that because we have to discuss the ending, and we don't want to do that, right?
I agree.
The thing is that there is, I'll say this, there is a confrontation with the past enacted right now in the world. I mean, people topple monuments, okay? Yeah. So the question of the past is a big question now politically. People campaign on it during the election now. So as people who, you know, storytellers, for me at least, the point is not to say this is proper, this is not proper, this, you know what I mean? It's, the point is to, if there is an issue, is to kind of explore it and kind of agitate it and permutate it, and kind of, if there is a, let's say, between him and her, a contradiction, okay? My job is not to say, our jobs is not to say how to deal with it, but to have people experience that contradiction.
Right.
But also
as much as possible.
But also, like, you know, meet violence with violence, like, you know, hitting back, striking back, like, I'm gonna cause as much pain to you as you did to me. Does it work? That was the question, like, every film I step into, and even more now as a producer, like, what kind of stories do I want to tell? Like, why do I want to tell this story? And how is it relevant today? And we all have something, you know, we all have some event, someone who did something to us and was like, I want to destroy you. I want to make you, I want to hurt you. I want to, like, you know, make you feel what you did to me. And in the end of the day, you know, for me, that was kind of one of the most important things to just to explore and to deep dive into, you know, how can you mend? How can, is that a fix? Is that a cure? You know, and then, you know, both these questions is something that we are, you know, dealing with between Louis and Maja. And, like, even if it is him, because we don't know if it's him. We think it's him, she thinks it's him, but we don't know. And Louis definitely doesn't know.
Louis actually comes back and says, Thomas's story checks out.
Yeah.
Right. That is a very powerful line in the movie. Because even Maja, as acting as Maja, you can see in her face, you know, you then, I think you quickly think about it, and then you say, well, he has an alibi, or, you know, you gave a reason why that's possible, that the story could check out and he could still be the person. So it's clear. She says to Thomas at some point, tell me the truth so that my husband won't think I'm lying.
Yeah.
Am I right? I think
that is something, you know, people that carry it like something so horrible, you know, not being trusted or believed, like carrying that alone. And then the moment you actually gain enough courage and bravery to bring it up and to talk about it and not being believed, imagine that. So it's a trauma on a trauma. And then, you know, where do you go then? You know, there's no coming back from that. You have to, you need to, like, the truth needs to come out. Otherwise you lost everything.
Yuval, but it's interesting, right? Louis, with his doubts, still knows that he has to play this out for his wife.
Well,
right?
we can't.
He only once says, I'm going to the police, and then she stops him. But he realizes he's going to play this out no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing with Louis is that, and that's an interesting thing for an actor to play, is that he's kind of playing blind. He doesn't know all that's going on, you know? He doesn't know all that's going on, and the stuff that's going on is stuff that his character can't really deal with emotionally. He's not prepared to deal with emotionally.
Which is why, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I think it was an interesting thing for him to play, you know? He's always reacting to
to specific things that happening, but he doesn't have until the end, he doesn't have a view of everything, you know, and he doesn't have, and he doesn't have to confront what he actually don't want to confront fully, which is the past, you know, his wife's past.
But also he says, at one point, she says to him, why are you helping him?
Yeah.
Right?
He's a doctor.
Right?
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
And she goes down and she realizes, wait a minute, you're doing things for him. Why are you? So you can see his own level of confusion. This is not natural. He's going to play this out because his wife has put them in this position as a couple. And he's going to play it out, but he doesn't necessarily believe her, which is why he calls the psychiatrist, which is why he wants, you know, he says, look, give me something that I can prove, you know, that you can prove your innocence. What about the idea that she, you know, this is sort of a revenge movie where the vengeance is not described or performed in a conventional way at all. The person seeking revenge is really looking for truth seeking and storytelling. They're not really looking for the conventional eye for an eye. They're looking for something deeper in a way. I think, again, it's a twist. Film is a twist on a number of different genres. It is a little like something, and then it's not. In this way, it's like a revenge movie, and it's not. What about this idea? You know, I can't help but think of you because I so much admired Bethlehem, and it's clear, that earlier film of yours, that you have a reconciliatory impulse in you, you know, for a kind of peace. You know, how can
not everybody saw it like that.
Yeah, I know, but but I think that I sense in the pre-Fauda days.
I appreciate that.
That there was some understanding of, you know, relationships that could be built, you know, but for these enemies, things that could exist. And I wonder when Noomi says, I won't tell your wife and children, do we actually believe it's possible that they could have lived in the town together?
That's a good question. That's exactly the point. Like, in any way, there's now, again, we can't say the ending, but like if there is something that the movie kind of enacts, is this idea that if you have a secret, you know, sometimes you have, you know, this catharsis where, like, okay, I had a lot of movies were like this, you know, it's a kind of a, there's a big secret, and then there's this family melodrama, and the secret is revealed, right? And then there's kind of, it's like a psychoanalytic therapy. It's like, okay, I have this thing, it's repressed, I bring it out, I'm cured. But in a way, here, again, without getting into details, one secret is replaced by another. Not much easier to bear. Maybe you can't get rid, you know?
It was throughout, like, our first, when you and me were sitting right there where you're sitting. When I was
right here.
I was sitting next to you there, and we were talking about, like, life. Yeah. You know, it was so important for both of us to make it real, to make it, to really reflect, like, how does a person react, like, and a lot of times in real life it's very irrational, it's not straightforward, it's not what you think, it's not, you know, the cliche simple, you know, straightforward routes to a solution. You know, people go like this. So I think we both had this, we have this love for the realness in life, you know.
Well, there's also this question that if they could live together in the same town, is it possible for these two people, given everything, to start fresh, to have a blank slate? You know, there's an interesting question, and Lewis says to her at some point, he says, can you eventually put this behind you? And can you forgive? Which seems to me two separate questions, right? They're two, he asks both big, I would say, giant existential questions.
Right.
And she doesn't really know the answer to this, because I don't remember.
No, you know, and that is the beauty in this film. Like, it is a thriller, and it has all that, you know, you go on a ride as an audience, you don't know until the very end. But like, for me, when I was living in her, she was living with me, I got the answer to that question in the very end. You know, my answer. And then there's a scene where Maja and Lewis is talking outside in the chicken house, in the hen house. And she said, like, I'm not running again. I don't want to escape from this. I'm not going to be forced away again. I'm standing strong. This is my home. We created this. I need truth. I need a truth, because I don't want you to think I'm the crazy one anymore. So she's actually defending her right to be happy. She wants to heal. She wants that more than she wants to destroy.
And starting fresh, Yuval, is this film redemptive in such a way, life affirming in such a way, that we want to believe that, given the horrific experiences both of them were engaged in, one as a persecutor involved in atrocities and the other survivor of atrocities, that in a small American town, an ocean away, they can be someone else?
Well, I don't think that's the de facto ending of the film is not that, right?
Well, no, but I don't want to give away the ending.
Exactly. So,
but I do think that it does raise a question. The film's asking you this question. It asks it in several different parts. It's asking, is it possible for this movie to not be a conventional revenge movie, right? That's one question. And is it possible for there to be a moral message here that is beyond a kind of, you know, like Immanuel Kant's understanding is that, you know, revenge means that the other life has to be taken. It must happen. It's a moral imperative. In this instance, maybe the film is saying, well, the moral imperative is to find a way for Maja to live. Is there a way for her to raise a family like a person? And that's why I'm wondering whether it does have a redemptive side here, because it wants, you know, let me just say this. I wrote a book about revenge, so I know a little something about this. And let me tell you about all revenge movies. They have one thing, and they have several things in common. But one thing in common is, at the end, the avenger is not going to be okay. Even after he does the job, there is no revenge movie. They either have to walk away, or they're killed, or, you know, even in jokey movies like The Princess Bride, Inigo Montoya says, I've been spending my entire life looking for the six-fingered man, and now that I killed him, I don't know what to do with myself. Meaning that the revenge movie is always saying that the act must be done, but revenge will not be sweet. It won't be sweet. You will not see, you know, like in The Searchers, John Wayne walks away. They always walk away. They're not part of the community. So that's why I'm wondering that there's the redemptive moments here that give this more hope than your standard revenge fare. I wonder if you both or one can speak to that.
I mean, again, it's hard without the ending, but I think this idea that one secret was revealed, but another one, in the process, another repressed secret now emerged. You have to decide what it means, you know, if that's redemption or not. It's hard to say for me.
Noomi, there's that scene toward the end where he's describing his own, you know, his own breakdown. And without giving anything away, I just want to say it does look like when he's saying, I can't sleep, you know, he's describing the similar patterns. And there is a wonderful moment that you have with Thomas, with Joel, your friend, your actor friend, where it's as if that there is a linking up of the survivor and the oppressor are linked by the fact that they can't sleep, that they have nightmares.
But also, I mean, I think that's something we did discuss a lot. It's important to see, like, you know, if you look at the soldiers, and they were young boys, you know, a lot of times in wars, there's like kids, you know, with guns. you know, and they are forced and they're put on drugs and they're like, you know, they're under a lot of pressure and they are forced to do horrible things. And like, who is responsible? Where does the chain of responsibility start?
Yeah.
So you can also feel, and I think Joel did that with, in a very tender and like, you know, it kind of just hit me when I was acting with him. I felt his pain, and that he was also a victim for the war, you know, even though he happened to be on the other side, you know, they were also, he also carried those internal scars. And that's kind of the connecting points between us.
There's a clever line in there, Yuval, you might have written it, where he says, it was just a year before that I was in high school.
Yeah.
Right? It's one line, but it says everything. Yeah. He said, I'm basically a boy.
Yeah.
A year ago, I was in high school, and then I did this horrible thing. But I want to leave you, before we get to the questions from the audience, Noomi raised it here, so I can't resist. So, you know, there's the Hannah Arendt book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, The Banality of Evil. And it's a controversial book. It's a controversial book for the point that Noomi just said, that were many of these people merely cogs in a machine who were just following orders, and that they had no very strong feelings one way or the other about Jews or Roma. They were just following orders, and they were cogs in a machine, like a big bureaucracy. And so that evil is banal, everyone can do it, put in the same situation. We all have the same, you know, possibilities. Or people who rejected that book because what it does is it humanized Nazis. It said to the audience, to readers, hey, everyone can do this, everyone can gas, everyone can, you know, machine gun down 40,000 people, anyone can mass murder. And there are people who think, no, that's not true. The Nazis were special. They were not like everyone. I wonder whether, because Joel is a very likable actor. And, you know, in a way he is, you know, Thomas is someone you could befriend in that community. In the early scenes, he looks like he's developed friendships. So I wonder whether you think that you've added on to this Hannah Arendt, you know, discussion, I won't say controversy, I'll say discussion about humanizing evil.
Look, one thing we talked about before, that the things that she alleges that he did are not kind of spectacular Nazi type stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's a war crime that's much more common and happens in many places. And yeah, the banality of it is like that criminals are also human, that like you know, this thing that you don't, you know, there's this tendency today, and in general always, to put a line and it says, this I put outside of the line of human, of what I can understand, what I can relate to. You know, Nazis, you know, Harvey Weinstein I don't know, you know what I mean? Like there's always a line, you say, this is outside. This, you can't say anything to try to explain or justify it. Right. This is outside of discourse, right? Right. That happens a lot. For me, there's no line. Okay, everything is in the realm of the human and deserves to be understood. Even Nazis. And here it wasn't even kind of a hardcore, what she blames him for. It wasn't a big Nazi thing. The question is, as you said, if what she blames him for, he was very young. And, you know, so how do you deal with it? You know? Right. And again, in a way, this same question came in the Kavanaugh Ford hearing. Yes. Many people who defend him said the guy was 17. Okay, he was drunk. Okay. Yeah. And the other people said, well, I don't care if he was 17. He did da-da-da-da-da. He did this stuff. I don't care. Okay. Yeah. So that question, it was 30 years ago, he was 17 or not. You know, that's something that we always, you know, we always have to.
But what is evil? I mean, for me, it's so. You know, I had a conversation with a friend the other day, like, you know, are all kids, children born innocent or not? Are some like, you know, are some born with dark souls and like, you know, with a tendency of violence and for me, like I feel as an artist, it's my duty and my responsibility to, with no judgment, look at each character from a perspective of almost being a mother to them, you know, to see all the sides of them and try to fully understand them, no matter where they are on the scale, because you can always track it back to where's the break point for this person? Where did this person break? When did this person become a rapist or a killer or a gang member or whatever it is? Like when, what happened? And if you can track it back and actually understand the core and the beginning of the circle of violence, then you can maybe start understanding like how to deal with it, how to meet someone like that, how to have a conversation. Like, I hate racists. I get like, I see red, like, and then it's like, okay, but if I start screaming, it doesn't help. You know, I have to track it back. Evil, it's way too simple for me.
Huh. That is a wonderful and very insightful way to end our conversation. So before we say good night, I think for Noomi it's later, to Noomi and Yuval, let me just give you some closing announcements, some of our upcoming events before we say goodbye and thank them and wish them such good luck on their opening next week. Let's see, Shervin, let's see, what do we got? Yeah. September 24th, we have another advanced screening. The film is called A Call to Spy. We have the director and the star as well of that film. That's September 24th at 7:30. You'll get notices if you make sure that you sign up for these events on folks.org. Then on very special, on September 24th, yes, that's the legendary jazz impresario, Wynton Marsalis. He has a new musical composition that's coming out soon. I think it's out already, called The Ever Funky Lowdown, and we'll be talking to Wynton about the creation of that new musical composition. We don't have a slide for it, but on October 15th, we have the writer Barry Weiss, formerly with the New York Times. She has a book on anti-Semitism. She's also written widely about the decline of liberal culture, and we'll see her on October 15th at 8 p.m. And yes, we are a nonprofit at folks.org, and we have not been charging all summer in order to give you meaningful content during the pandemic. And so this would be a nice time, if you could, to donate to help to keep this nonprofit afloat. We even have a way you can do it by text, but it's important if you're not on our website to get upcoming events, to go to folks.org. If you're watching on Facebook, please do the same thing. I really want to thank Noomi and Yuval for this incredibly stimulating, interesting, and fun conversation among friends, Yuval.
Yes.
Always among friends.
Yes.
This is congratulate you on a really very special movie. And for those of you who haven't yet seen it, many of the audience have, please go see this. This is worth going outside in a pandemic for. It's a harrowing movie. It's
completely.
It's an original movie. It's a movie that will stay with you. And that's the best kind of art. So thank you both, Noomi, Yuval. I'm Thane Rosenbaum for Folks. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.